What is Neville Goddard's best quote, and how can it awaken a force within you capable of transforming every corner of your reality? In this video, you will discover the secret principle that underlies all of Neville's teachings, the one insight that can make your desires inevitable, and the way your imagination can sculpt your life with precision and grace, leaving you empowered, curious, and ready to act in alignment with the unseen currents of creation. This is where it begins, in the quiet corners of the mind, where imagination hums like a hidden engine, waiting to be activated and felt fully. Because the first step to mastery is awareness. This is how it unfolds, when you start to realize that every external circumstance is merely a reflection of an internal assumption, and that your consciousness is the artist painting the canvas of your experience. This is where truth breaks through, and the veil between longing and reality starts to thin, revealing that what you feel and assume with conviction is already moving toward manifestation. This is why it matters, because without this understanding, effort and struggle can dominate your life, leaving you exhausted yet unfulfilled, while a single shift in perception can reroute destiny effortlessly. This is where illusion fades, as you begin to see that limitations are self-imposed, that the boundaries you've believed to be real are only the outlines of old assumptions no longer serving you. This is the turning point, when you grasp that Neville's quote is not a mere philosophy, but a practical tool, a method for engineering reality from the inside out, and that its application requires both feeling and imagination in harmony. This is where insight emerges, for the heart and mind must collaborate, sensation must anchor thought, and belief must saturate feeling before reality bends in response. This is how mastery begins, through disciplined awareness of the inner world, a conscious cultivation of scenes, and the audacity to live as though desires are already fulfilled. This is the moment when doubt is recognized as a signal to deepen feeling, when uncertainty becomes an invitation to strengthen assumption, and when hesitation is transformed into deliberate interaction. This is why clarity is essential, because a muddled mind produces fragmented results, and only a focused, vivid, emotionally charged assumption can set the wheels of manifestation in motion. This is where courage steps forward, as you confront the seeming impossibility of desires and choose to inhabit the reality you long for, despite contrary appearances. This is how patience becomes art, because manifestation is not measured in seconds, but in the fidelity of feeling and the depth of inner conviction. This is where connection deepens, with a sense that your inner life is in dialogue with unseen forces, a silent orchestration of circumstance responding to the notes of imagination. This is the first revelation, that Neville's best quote encapsulates the method for consciously creating every event, encounter, and outcome you experience, giving you agency in a world that often seems random. This is the spark of empowerment, as you sense the potential for transformation lying dormant within every breath, every thought, every unclaimed moment of creative imagination. This is where curiosity ignites, because understanding how to live from the fulfilled feeling opens doors to experiences previously unimaginable. This is how perspective shifts, when you realize that the world is malleable, that your assumptions shape time and space, and that the secret is as simple as feeling reality now. This is where revelation touches your spirit, because applying Neville's insight means stepping beyond the limitations of ordinary consciousness and into the living theater of your dreams. This is why the journey begins here, with this single recognition, this invitation to see differently and to feel differently, as the unseen becomes seen, and as the possible transforms into the inevitable. Can you imagine a world where every thought you entertain, every feeling you nurture, and every scenario you vividly imagine is not just a fleeting fantasy, but a blueprint for reality itself? In this video, you will witness how Neville's teaching on assumption reveals the mechanism by which consciousness molds existence, how adopting the feeling of the wish fulfilled can alter the course of your life, and how mastering this principle allows you to move with certainty toward your desires without struggle or doubt. This is where it begins, in the quiet surrender to imagination, where you close your eyes and step into a scene as though it were already real. Because only by living the end internally can the beginning transform externally. This is how it unfolds, when you recognize that the world does not shape you, but that your assumptions shape the world, creating a mirror that faithfully reflects your inner state. This is where truth breaks through, for the smallest belief held with unwavering feeling can ripple into experiences that appear miraculous, yet follow a perfectly natural law. This is why it matters, because too many people wait for circumstances to change before feeling fulfilled, not realizing that the external only obeys the internal, and that waiting is the silent denial of creative power. This is where illusion fades, as you understand that scarcity, limitation, and failure exist only as shadows of the mind, dissolving when illuminated by deliberate assumption. This is the turning point, when you grasp that your imagination is not a playground but a laboratory, where desires are tested, refined, and ultimately realized in the theater of reality. This is where insight emerges, revealing that action matters only insofar as it aligns with the inner state, and that external effort without inner conviction is like pouring water into sand. This is how mastery begins, through repetition, through living in the end, and through cultivating sensations that make the imagined scenario tangible, believable, and inevitable. This is the moment when resistance is encountered, when doubt whispers, and when appearances contradict desire, yet steadfast assumption continues to shape outcomes unseen. This is why clarity is essential, for vague or half-hearted beliefs yield fragmented results, while precise, emotionally charged assumptions attract corresponding experiences. This is where courage steps forward, as you persist in feeling fulfilled even when the external world denies it, trusting the unseen as the soil in which your desires grow. This is how patience becomes art, because the universe orchestrates events according to timing beyond the grasp of immediate perception, rewarding faith with tangible alignment. This is where connection deepens, as you sense synchronicities and coincidences that confirm your inner state is already influencing reality, offering proof of the law in motion. This is the revelation, that every fulfilled wish begins with an assumption, a conscious inhabitation of the desired reality that precedes its physical manifestation. This is the spark of empowerment, for when you realize the world obeys the feeling of the wish fulfilled, fear and hesitation lose their grip, and boldness arises naturally. This is where curiosity ignites, as each imagined scene becomes an experiment in creation, a dance between imagination and manifestation, calling forth previously unimaginable experiences. This is how perspective shifts, revealing that life is not a battlefield of circumstance, but a canvas responsive to the strokes of inner belief and vivid feeling. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for assumption is not simply a concept, but the living pulse of creative life, the secret engine through which every desire can be made inevitable. Now consider this. What if the key to manifesting every desire you've ever held lies not in effort, planning, or external action, but in the vivid sensation of having already received what you long for? In this video, you will learn why Neville insisted that feeling is the secret, how inhabiting the emotional reality of your fulfilled wish accelerates manifestation, and how mastering this subtle art allows your life to bend effortlessly toward the vision you hold inside, offering freedom, clarity, and an extraordinary sense of agency. This is where it begins, in the quiet intensity of emotion, where the mind surrenders to the body and the body surrenders to the imagination, because true creation is born in the alchemy of feeling and thought. This is how it unfolds, as you close your eyes and conjure a scene in rich, cinematic detail, allowing every sensory nuance and heartbeat to affirm that the desire is already realized. This is where truth breaks through, revealing that the world outside is but a reflection of the inner world, and that your assumptions resonate like a tuning fork across reality. This is why it matters, because without feeling, assumptions remain lifeless, mere ideas that lack the power to shift circumstances, whereas the right sensation acts as a magnet for corresponding events. This is where illusion fades, for many confuse action with creation, not seeing that the most profound work occurs internally, where sensation shapes experience long before evidence appears. This is the turning point, when you recognize that joy, relief, gratitude, and satisfaction are not just emotions to be felt occasionally, but tools for constructing reality with precision and inevitability. This is where insight emerges. That persistence in the feeling is the true discipline. And that repeated emotional rehearsal imprints the desired reality on the subconscious, which governs outward manifestation. This is how mastery begins, by learning to live in the state of fulfilled desire continuously, allowing it to permeate thought, conversation, and perception without interruption. This is the moment when doubt is challenged, when the tension between present reality and imagined feeling arises, and when steadfast emotion dissolves fear, reinforcing your command over life's unfolding. This is why clarity is essential, because only a clearly defined emotional scene can be carried with conviction, while vague or lukewarm feelings produce fragmented, slow, or partial outcomes. This is where courage steps forward, compelling you to maintain the inner state despite evidence to the contrary, trusting unseen forces to arrange the perfect sequence of events. This is how patience becomes art, because the external world often lags behind the internal reality, testing faith and refining commitment to the sensation of fulfillment. This is where connection deepens, as subtle coincidences, inspired ideas, and synchronistic encounters begin to confirm the potency of sustained feeling. This is the revelation that emotion is not incidental to creation. It is the engine, the pulse, and the secret doorway through which imagination translates to reality. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that by feeling your wish fulfilled now, you trigger a chain of events that externalizes that feeling into concrete life experiences. This is where curiosity ignites, prompting exploration of how every nuance of sensation can be harnessed, sharpened, and directed to orchestrate the life you desire. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that life is a mirror of internal states, and that conscious, deliberate emotion is the key to unlocking a universe of possibilities. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for when feeling and imagination unite, reality bends in alignment with your inner vision, and Neville's secret unfolds as living, breathing truth. Suppose you discover that the most profound shift in life occurs the moment you begin to live in the end, fully embodying the reality you wish to experience before it appears externally. In this video, you will uncover how Neville's guidance to live in the end allows you to bypass struggle, accelerate manifestation, and cultivate a seamless alignment between inner conviction and outer reality, offering clarity, power, and a newfound freedom to shape life consciously. This is where it begins, by closing your eyes and stepping into a scene where your desire is already fulfilled, where every detail, sound, scent, and sensation resonates with certainty and satisfaction, because the end is not a destination, but a present experience that can be inhabited now. This is how it unfolds. When the mind surrenders to imagination, the heart aligns with feeling, and the body responds as though the fulfilled scene is tangible, making the unseen palpable and unavoidable. This is where truth breaks through, as the illusion of waiting for external conditions to change dissolves, revealing that the internal state dictates the sequence and quality of life events. This is why it matters, because living in the end transforms fear into confidence, hesitation into deliberate action, and doubt into steady, unshakable faith that life itself is responsive to your assumptions. This is where illusion fades, as you witness circumstances begin to mirror the inner world, when people, events, and opportunities converge in ways previously considered impossible, orchestrated by the law of consciousness. This is the turning point, when the friction between current reality and desired reality becomes irrelevant, as you operate from a state that automatically magnetizes the conditions, people, and timing necessary for manifestation. This is where insight emerges, that the mind is a stage, and you are both director and actor, designing the scene with every breath, thought, and feeling, letting the external world follow as a reflection. This is how mastery begins, with consistent mental rehearsal, fully engaged emotion, and unwavering assumption, until living in the end becomes as natural as breathing. This is the moment when resistance surfaces, when external evidence contradicts your internal state, yet your commitment to the fulfilled scene overrides appearances, and reality starts bending to match. This is why clarity is essential, for only the vividly imagined end, charged with genuine emotion, carries the weight to reshape subconscious patterns and evoke real-life consequences. This is where courage steps forward, allowing you to maintain the inner reality against all odds, trusting the invisible threads that guide synchronicity and opportunity toward alignment. This is how patience becomes art, as you witness the universe moving in rhythm with your inner state, orchestrating outcomes that are precise, unexpected, and perfectly timed. This is where connection deepens, with subtle confirmations, chance encounters, inspired thoughts, doors opening effortlessly, validating the power of living in the end. This is the revelation that fulfillment is not contingent upon time or external conditions, but emerges naturally when the mind, heart, and imagination are harmonized in the sensation of the wish fulfilled. This is the spark of empowerment, as you recognize the simplicity and elegance of Neville's method, to embody the end, feel it fully, and watch reality comply. This is where curiosity ignites, prompting exploration of new desires and deeper levels of feeling, each scene more vivid and transformative than the last. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that life is a mirror of inner states, and mastery lies in deliberate inhabitation of desired realities. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for living in the end transforms ordinary existence into a cinematic unfolding of dreams made inevitable. Envision a world where faith is not just a passive hope, but an active, living force that propels imagination into tangible reality, where the unseen obeys the intensity of your belief with absolute precision. In this video, you will learn why Neville emphasized faith as the indispensable engine of manifestation, how unwavering trust in the fulfilled state bridges the gap between imagination and experience, and how cultivating this inner certainty empowers you to navigate life with clarity, confidence, and unstoppable creative momentum. This is where it begins, in the quiet surrender of disbelief, when you consciously choose to trust the reality you feel, rather than the evidence before your eyes. Because faith is the bridge that transforms mental scenes into external fulfillment. This is how it unfolds, as you nurture the conviction that everything imagined in vivid feeling is already in motion, unfolding behind the veil of perception, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. This is where truth breaks through, revealing that doubt is merely a shadow of the mind, a resistance that must be acknowledged, understood, and transcended in order for creation to proceed unhindered. This is why it matters, because without faith, imagination remains inert, a fragile seed that cannot sprout into the robust tree of reality, and the law of assumption cannot operate fully. This is where illusion fades, as you recognize that waiting for proof is the trap of limited thinking, and that the evidence you seek is always generated by your internal state of unwavering belief. This is the turning point, when fear and hesitation are replaced by deliberate focus, when the heart and mind converge to sustain the emotional reality of the wish fulfilled, making the unseen tangible. This is where insight emerges, that faith is not blind optimism, but a cultivated certainty anchored in repeated imagination and heartfelt sensation, a discipline that transforms longing into manifestation. This is how mastery begins, by persistently returning to the inner scene with precision, refining emotion, and refusing to be swayed by appearances, knowing that reality is faithful to what is felt and assumed. This is the moment when resistance is revealed, when external contradictions arise, and when persistence in feeling becomes the decisive factor that bends life toward alignment with desire. This is why clarity is essential, because vague faith produces inconsistent results, while faith steeped in vivid, sensory imagination accelerates outcomes and reshapes subconscious expectation. This is where courage steps forward, compelling you to maintain inner conviction against uncertainty, trusting the unseen architecture of life that arranges circumstances in perfect synchrony. This is how patience becomes art, as faith allows the natural unfolding of events in accordance with your inner state, transforming time from an obstacle into an ally. This is where connection deepens, as repeated faithful assumption brings subtle confirmations, insights, opportunities, and encounters that reflect your internal certainty. This is the revelation that faith is the secret engine that converts imagination into reality, the invisible force that makes the impossible inevitable. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that cultivating inner trust amplifies every creative act, aligning thought, feeling, and circumstance. This is where curiosity ignites, encouraging exploration of desires with renewed audacity, knowing that the unseen world responds faithfully to sustained belief. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that life is not a random series of events, but a reflection of the fidelity and intensity of your internal assumptions. This is where revelation touches your spirit. For the moment faith and imagination unite, reality becomes a mirror of possibility made inevitable, and Neville's law of assumption is revealed in living color. Think of the moment when doubt creeps in, whispering that your desires are impossible, that circumstances are fixed, and that your imagination is futile. Because this is the universal test of whether your inner state is strong enough to shape reality. In this video, you will discover how Neville teaches the mastery of resistance, how confronting and dissolving inner skepticism accelerates manifestation, and how embracing unwavering assumption despite contrary appearances empowers you to transform obstacles into stepping stones toward fulfillment. This is where it begins, with the recognition that resistance is a natural response to the tension between current reality and imagined fulfillment, and that it must be faced deliberately rather than avoided. This is how it unfolds, as you learn to identify the subtle whispers of doubt, the fleeting fears, and the internal arguments that threaten to erode the certainty of your inner scene. This is where truth breaks through, revealing that these opposing thoughts are not enemies but signals pointing to areas where belief needs strengthening and where emotional commitment must deepen. This is why it matters, because the very presence of resistance indicates that creation is underway, that the subconscious is being challenged, and that your conviction is being tested before results appear externally. This is where illusion fades, as you see that external contradictions have no ultimate power over the reality you consistently inhabit within your imagination, and that appearances are temporary mirrors of incomplete assumption. This is the turning point, when you deliberately anchor yourself in the sensation of the wish fulfilled, allowing it to override fleeting thoughts, emotional fluctuations, and apparent evidence to the contrary. This is where insight emerges, that resistance is actually a guide, pointing toward the precise areas where your focus and feeling must be intensified for manifestation to proceed effortlessly. This is how mastery begins, through repeated mental rehearsal, persistent emotional engagement, and refusal to entertain contradictory beliefs, allowing the inner state to dominate over perception. This is the moment when fear dissolves, when hesitation is neutralized, and when inner steadiness becomes an unshakable foundation for creation, proving that the unseen responds only to unwavering conviction. This is why clarity is essential, because the more precise and emotionally vivid your imagined scene, the easier it is to neutralize resistance and sustain assumption. This is where courage steps forward, compelling you to persist in the face of apparent impossibility, trusting that the universe aligns itself with inner certainty rather than external appearances. This is how patience becomes art, as you maintain belief through delays, contradictions, and setbacks, knowing that the inner reality precedes external manifestation. This is where connection deepens, as subtle signs, synchronistic events, and inspired actions gradually confirm the alignment of inner state with outer reality. This is the revelation, that overcoming doubt is not about force or struggle, but about emotional fidelity to the imagined end, which naturally reconfigures circumstances to reflect your belief. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that every obstacle is a mirror of inner disbelief, waiting to be corrected by feeling, focus, and assumption. This is where curiosity ignites, prompting experimentation with new desires, scenes, and sensations, each testing and expanding the strength of your inner conviction. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that life does not impose limits but reflects the depth and consistency of your inner reality. This is where revelation touches your spirit. For in mastering doubt, you claim the full creative authority Neville described, turning resistance into a silent ally of inevitable manifestation. Ask yourself, what happens when you realize that your subconscious mind is not a passive repository of memories, fears, and habits, but the active canvas upon which every scene of your future life is painted with the brushstrokes of imagination and feeling? In this video, you will explore how Neville teaches the subconscious to accept your assumptions as reality, how aligning emotion with imagination programs your inner world for inevitable manifestation, and how mastering this principle allows you to consciously orchestrate life rather than react to it, giving you clarity, confidence, and a sense of creative sovereignty. This is where it begins, in the silent depths of the subconscious, where images, sensations, and beliefs are recorded with absolute fidelity, because the unseen mind is always listening, always shaping, and always reflecting your inner state outwardly. This is how it unfolds, when you cultivate vivid, sensory-rich mental scenes and saturate them with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, embedding them deeply into the layers of your mind that govern behavior and experience. This is where truth breaks through, revealing that the subconscious cannot distinguish between reality and what is imagined with conviction, and therefore obeys the feeling as though it is already manifest. This is why it matters, because without this understanding, attempts at creation are half-hearted, inconsistent, or fleeting, while deliberate programming of the subconscious accelerates outcomes with astonishing precision. This is where illusion fades, as you see that external conditions are secondary to internal acceptance, and that the subconscious acts as the faithful architect of every circumstance in life. This is the turning point, when you realize that repeated mental rehearsal and emotional fidelity are the tools by which the subconscious is instructed to produce tangible results, turning imagination into lived experience. This is where insight emerges, that patience, consistency, and the cultivation of vivid feeling are not optional, but essential disciplines for aligning subconscious expectation with conscious desire. This is how mastery begins, as you consciously feed the mind with scenes of abundance, love, success, and fulfillment, allowing habitual doubt and negative conditioning to be overwritten by deliberate creation. This is the moment when resistance is dissolved, when subconscious opposition is transformed into alignment, and when automatic processes begin to orchestrate reality in harmony with your inner vision. This is why clarity is essential, for vague or contradictory input into the subconscious produces fragmented manifestations, while precision and emotional intensity accelerate results exponentially. This is where courage steps forward, as you continue feeding the mind with imagined realities despite evidence of the present moment, trusting the unseen architecture of life. This is how patience becomes art, as the subconscious silently arranges events, timing, and relationships in response to the inner state, creating the external world in perfect alignment. This is where connection deepens, as subtle signs, insights, and synchronistic occurrences confirm the alignment between imagination and manifestation, reinforcing trust in the process. This is the revelation that the subconscious is not just a background processor, but the active stage manager of your reality, responding faithfully to the assumptions and feelings you cultivate. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that mastery of life begins with mastery of the inner mind, and that deliberate programming of feeling and imagination is the pathway to fulfillment. This is where curiosity ignites, encouraging you to experiment with new scenes, sensations, and beliefs, each shaping a richer, more expansive reality. This is how perspective shifts, showing that the mind is not a passive observer, but the central creator of experience, and that the key to change lies in what you impress upon it. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for when the subconscious mind is trained with clarity, feeling, and precision, life becomes the inevitable reflection of your imagined dreams. Picture for a moment the incredible power of living as though your desires have already been fulfilled, where each thought, feeling, and belief becomes a precise instrument guiding reality to align seamlessly with your imagination. In this video, you will witness how Neville's law of assumption operates in daily life, how consciously assuming the end reshapes circumstances, and how understanding this law empowers you to navigate challenges, attract opportunities, and create experiences that once seemed impossible, giving you control, clarity, and emotional freedom. This is where it begins, by recognizing that every external condition is a mirror reflecting the assumptions you hold within, because what is assumed and felt as real ultimately shapes every encounter, event, and outcome. This is how it unfolds, when you deliberately inhabit the sensation of your fulfilled desire, letting it saturate thought, conversation, and perception, and watch as the outer world bends subtly and inevitably to match. This is where truth breaks through, showing that appearances are not obstacles but temporary feedback, indicators of what the subconscious has yet to fully assimilate and align with your inner state. This is why it matters, because without applying the law actively, life can feel reactive, random, and limiting, whereas deliberate assumption transforms life into a predictable and rewarding reflection of your inner fidelity. This is where illusion fades, as you learn to distinguish between fleeting external circumstances and the enduring inner reality that alone determines what ultimately manifests. This is the turning point when consistent assumption overrides doubt, fear, and uncertainty, creating a magnetic alignment between imagination, feeling, and outward experience. This is where insight emerges, that small, persistent shifts in assumption can accumulate into massive changes in reality, demonstrating the precise and scientific nature of Neville's teaching. This is how mastery begins, by choosing thoughts and feelings intentionally, saturating them with the conviction that the desired reality is already present, and patiently observing life's responses. This is the moment when resistance is revealed and gently transcended, as contradictory evidence serves as a signal to strengthen the inner state rather than abandon it. This is why clarity is essential, because a clearly defined and emotionally charged assumption impresses the subconscious more powerfully than vague or scattered intention. This is where courage steps forward, allowing you to maintain the assumed state despite external appearances, trusting the invisible processes that respond to inner fidelity. This is how patience becomes art, as you observe synchronicities, inspired ideas, and circumstances aligning with your assumed reality over time. This is where connection deepens, with subtle confirmations that your inner life is shaping the outer world, reinforcing confidence in the law's operation. This is the revelation, that consistent application of the law of assumption is not wishful thinking, but a practical, repeatable method for creating desired outcomes. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that by managing inner assumption, you effectively command the sequence of life events with precision and ease. This is where curiosity ignites, inspiring exploration of new desires, more vivid assumptions, and greater levels of emotional fidelity. This is how perspective shifts, revealing life as a responsive canvas, molded not by circumstance, but by the quality and consistency of inner assumption. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for when assumption is mastered, reality becomes a living reflection of conscious creation, and the world responds as faithfully as your imagination dictates. Now consider this. What if every detail of your life, from relationships to career, health, and abundance, could be orchestrated not through external effort but through the deliberate use of imagination, crafted with vivid emotion and unwavering conviction? In this video, you will discover how Neville elevates imagination from idle daydreaming to a practical instrument of creation, how immersive mental scenes impress the subconscious, and how mastering this skill allows you to design experiences that materialize effortlessly, giving your life clarity, potency, and elegance. This is where it begins, with the conscious decision to imagine as though reality itself is malleable, where every thought becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of life, because imagination is the invisible architect shaping everything you see and experience. This is how it unfolds, as you visualize scenes in rich sensory detail, feeling every nuance of success, love, or abundance as though it were already present, embedding the scenario deeply into your subconscious mind. This is where truth breaks through, revealing that imagination coupled with feeling is more influential than physical effort, because the world responds to the internal state rather than mere action. This is why it matters, because most people wait for conditions to change externally, unaware that every circumstance is a reflection of unchallenged, habitual inner assumptions. This is where illusion fades, as you realize that lack, limitation, and struggle exist only when imagination and feeling are absent, and that by harnessing them consciously, you can bend events to your desire. This is the turning point, when thought becomes deliberate, mental rehearsal is practiced daily, and the inner scene is felt with unwavering certainty, bridging the gap between vision and reality. This is where insight emerges, that imagination is not fanciful or superficial, but the foundational tool for manifesting reality, and mastery comes from consistent, emotionally rich engagement. This is how mastery begins, through disciplined focus, repeated inner enactment, and the courage to inhabit desired outcomes despite external contradictions. This is the moment when resistance appears, when doubt tries to break the inner scene, yet persistence and feeling overpower hesitation, letting imagination dictate life's unfolding. This is why clarity is essential, because vague mental images produce inconsistent manifestations, whereas detailed, sensory, and emotionally charged imagination impresses the subconscious with precision. This is where courage steps forward, sustaining imaginative practice, even when the physical world seems unresponsive, trusting that the unseen always aligns with inner fidelity. This is how patience becomes art, as repeated engagement with imagined realities allows life to naturally converge with the inner state, orchestrating events, relationships, and opportunities harmoniously. This is where connection deepens, as subtle synchronicities, inspired ideas, and unexpected paths validate the potency of imagination, affirming the law in action. This is the revelation, that imagination is not merely a creative exercise, but the ultimate instrument of shaping tangible experience, converting thought and feeling into lived reality. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that consciously directing imagination with emotion puts you in command of life itself, bypassing struggle and limitation. This is where curiosity ignites, inspiring ever more elaborate and precise inner scenes, each expanding the scope of what you can bring into reality. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that external conditions are secondary, transient reflections, while imagination and feeling are the true creators of existence. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for when imagination is fully trusted, life begins to unfold as an exact mirror of the world you deliberately feel, see, and inhabit within. Envision a life where thought, feeling, and action are no longer scattered or contradictory, but move together in perfect harmony, guiding circumstances to reflect the reality you have deliberately imagined. In this video, you will discover how Neville emphasizes the alignment of these three forces, how consistent mental and emotional rehearsal informs inspired action, and how mastering this integration accelerates manifestation, giving you clarity, effortless momentum, and unshakable confidence in your creative power. This is where it begins, with the recognition that inner coherence is the hidden currency of creation, because the subconscious responds to unified signals of thought and feeling, and the outer world mirrors that harmony. This is how it unfolds, as you cultivate mental clarity by vividly imagining your fulfilled desire, saturate it with the feeling of absolute reality, and then allow inspired action to flow naturally without forcing or struggling. This is where truth breaks through, revealing that action alone is powerless without internal alignment, and that effort without emotional conviction produces scattered, incomplete, or delayed results. This is why it matters, because mastering the triad of thought, feeling, and action transforms life from reactive chaos into deliberate orchestration, where opportunities appear effortlessly in response to inner fidelity. This is where illusion fades, as you release the belief that hard work alone determines outcome, and instead recognize the invisible architecture of creation responding faithfully to your inner state. This is the turning point, when inspired steps become the natural expression of imagination and emotion, effortlessly bridging the inner vision with tangible manifestation. This is where insight emerges, that inner alignment is both the map and the vehicle, guiding you toward fulfillment without resistance or struggle. This is how mastery begins, by continuously calibrating your thoughts and feelings until action becomes a spontaneous reflection of the assumed reality. This is the moment when doubt is neutralized, when hesitation disappears, and when the triad moves in a rhythmic, unbroken current toward the realization of your desires. This is why clarity is essential, for only precise, emotionally vibrant thoughts aligned with feeling produce consistent, reproducible outcomes in life. This is where courage steps forward, enabling you to maintain inner coherence despite external disruptions, trusting the unseen law that responds to sustained assumption. This is how patience becomes art, as alignment ensures that events, people, and opportunities converge with perfect timing, orchestrating outcomes without friction. This is where connection deepens, as synchronicities and inspired insights confirm that your inner state dictates the external, validating the power of integrated creation. This is the revelation that alignment of thought, feeling, and action is the practical expression of Neville's teachings, making manifestation predictable, effortless, and precise. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that controlling your internal signals naturally guides reality into cooperation with your imagined end. This is where curiosity ignites, prompting experimentation with increasingly bold desires, confident that aligned thought, feeling, and action will bring them into reality. This is how perspective shifts, showing that life is a mirror of internal coherence, and that mastery begins with inner synchronization before external evidence appears. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for when thought, feeling, and action converge, reality obeys without exception, and Neville's law becomes a living, tangible truth in every aspect of life. Consider the possibility that persistence is not mere stubbornness, but the vital engine that carries imagination, feeling, and assumption through the turbulence of doubt, delay, and apparent contradiction until reality aligns with desire. In this video, you will discover how Neville teaches persistence as the cornerstone of creation, how unwavering repetition of the assumed state strengthens the subconscious imprint, and how mastering this discipline allows your desires to emerge effortlessly, giving you resilience, clarity, and a deep sense of creative authority. This is where it begins, in the steady cultivation of mental scenes, where daily return to the feeling of fulfillment gradually erodes resistance, because persistence impresses the subconscious more powerfully than fleeting effort or scattered thought. This is how it unfolds, as each repetition, each immersion in vivid imagination, each saturation of emotion builds momentum, silently orchestrating life in accordance with the assumed reality. This is where truth breaks through, showing that time is not an obstacle but a measure of fidelity, and that the universe responds to constancy rather than urgency. This is why it matters, because intermittent belief produces fragmented results, while steadfast commitment transforms internal states into irresistible attractors of circumstance. This is where illusion fades, as the seeming delay of external events is revealed to be the refinement of internal fidelity, preparing the subconscious for the full manifestation of the wish fulfilled. This is the turning point, when patience and repetition coalesce, creating an unbroken current of intention and feeling that cannot be disrupted by doubt, fear, or external appearances. This is where insight emerges, that persistence is not struggle, but rhythm, a conscious dance between imagination, feeling, and inner expectation that sets reality into motion. This is how mastery begins, by honoring the discipline of repeated mental enactment, by saturating each scene with conviction, and by refusing to abandon the inner assumption even when circumstances seem contrary. This is the moment when resistance is tested, when outer evidence appears to contradict desire, yet steadfast persistence maintains the inner state, gradually bending reality toward alignment. This is why clarity is essential, because consistent, emotionally charged scenes become the blueprint the subconscious obeys, and scattered, weak, or half-hearted repetition fails to imprint effectively. This is where courage steps forward, sustaining dedication to the inner scene despite challenges, contradictions, and fleeting distractions, trusting that perseverance is rewarded invisibly before it appears externally. This is how patience becomes art, as repeated assumption without interference generates a rhythm in which life naturally reorganizes itself to match your inner reality. This is where connection deepens, as subtle, synchronistic events, timely opportunities, and fortuitous encounters signal that the persistent inner state is shaping the outer world. This is the revelation, that the power of persistence transforms imagination into inevitability, bridging internal certainty with external manifestation in ways that feel effortless yet unstoppable. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that steady, faithful practice of living in the fulfilled feeling guarantees results even when appearances suggest otherwise. This is where curiosity ignites, inspiring exploration of increasingly ambitious desires, knowing that sustained attention and feeling will bring them into life. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that persistence is not external effort but internal fidelity, the invisible engine that moves unseen forces to align with your assumption. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for in embracing persistence, you claim creative authority. And Neville's law manifests as a dependable, living truth across all areas of life. Suppose you discover that every memory, every moment of regret, and every perceived failure can be rewritten, revised, and transformed into a catalyst for creation. Because the past is not fixed, only the meaning you assign to it is. In this video, you will learn how Neville's technique of revision allows you to reframe experiences, erase limiting impressions, and impress the subconscious with new assumptions that shape your present and future, giving you clarity, empowerment, and the ability to turn setbacks into stepping stones. This is where it begins. By recalling events with attention to detail, observing the emotions they evoke, and deliberately reimagining them as you wish they had occurred. Because the mind cannot distinguish between vividly imagined memory and actual experience. This is how it unfolds, as each revised scene, saturated with feeling, replaces old impressions and aligns the subconscious with a new, empowering narrative that informs present reality. This is where truth breaks through, revealing that the past is not an anchor, but a malleable canvas, and that every experience can be harnessed to strengthen assumption rather than weaken it. This is why it matters, because unresolved regrets, resentments, or disappointments can silently block desires, while revision clears the subconscious, restoring the flow of creative alignment. This is where illusion fades, as you recognize that external circumstances do not define reality. The inner interpretation of events shapes belief, expectation, and eventual manifestation. This is the turning point when you take responsibility for the narrative of your life, choosing consciously to replay each scene with empowered feeling and desired outcomes, effectively reprogramming your inner world. This is where insight emerges, that mastery over life begins with mastery over memory, and that revision is not fantasy, but a precise tool to create the reality you wish to inhabit. This is how mastery begins, through disciplined, consistent practice of revising daily experiences, emotional encounters, and lingering doubts into scenes of fulfillment and satisfaction. This is the moment when resistance is revealed, when old patterns and emotions attempt to resurface, yet repeated revision weakens their influence, allowing new assumptions to dominate subconscious expectation. This is why clarity is essential, because only carefully detailed, emotionally charged revisions impress the subconscious with the potency required to influence external reality. This is where courage steps forward, as you confront uncomfortable memories without avoidance, using imagination and feeling to transform their energy into creative fuel. This is how patience becomes art, as repeated revision over time reshapes perception, transforms belief, and harmonizes inner and outer reality. This is where connection deepens, as previously stuck patterns dissolve and life begins to mirror the new internal narrative, confirming the power of deliberate revision. This is the revelation that the past is not a prison but a laboratory, where every moment can be reshaped to strengthen assumption and accelerate manifestation. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that by rewriting memory and experience, you control the impression left on the subconscious and the blueprint it follows. This is where curiosity ignites, inspiring exploration of deeper, previously unexamined experiences, knowing each can be transformed into a supportive foundation for desire. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that life is responsive not to external circumstance, but to the inner interpretation and persistent assumption impressed upon the subconscious. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for through revision, you claim the power to sculpt every moment into alignment with your dreams, embodying Neville's teaching as a living, actionable law. Envision a reality where feeling is not just an emotional reaction, but a precise instrument of creation, capable of shaping circumstances with the subtlety and power of an unseen force that governs every outcome. In this video, you will explore Neville's insight that feeling is the medium through which imagination impresses the subconscious, how cultivating specific sensations activates manifestation, and how mastering this science allows you to orchestrate life with precision, clarity, and effortless authority. This is where it begins, in the deliberate inhabitation of sensations associated with fulfilled desire, where each heartbeat, breath, and subtle shift in body chemistry reinforces the assumed reality, because the subconscious responds directly to what is felt as true. This is how it unfolds, as you repeatedly immerse yourself in the emotion of success, love, health, or abundance, letting it saturate every mental image and scenario until it becomes undeniable in your inner experience. This is where truth breaks through, showing that thought alone is inert without the animating force of feeling, and that life mirrors the emotional fidelity of your inner state with unerring accuracy. This is why it matters, because most people neglect the quality of their feeling, creating fragmented or delayed results, whereas precise, sustained emotion accelerates the translation of imagination into external reality. This is where illusion fades, as you recognize that circumstances cannot dictate your inner state. The law of assumption operates from feeling outward, making internal coherence the ultimate driver of life's outcomes. This is the turning point, when deliberate, emotionally charged rehearsal of scenes begins to impress the subconscious deeply, reprogramming expectations and aligning every aspect of experience with the desired end. This is where insight emerges, that every desire, no matter how grand or subtle, requires feeling as its vehicle, transforming abstract thought into tangible manifestation. This is how mastery begins, by training attention to dwell in the sensations of fulfillment consistently, allowing inner belief to permeate perception and action without interference. This is the moment when resistance is tested, when doubt and conflicting emotions attempt to undermine the scene. Yet persistent focus on feeling maintains the integrity of the assumed state. This is why clarity is essential, because vague or lukewarm emotions fail to impress the subconscious, while rich, textured, and sustained feeling creates a blueprint that reality naturally follows. This is where courage steps forward, sustaining the practice of immersive sensation, even when external conditions suggest delay or impossibility, trusting the invisible processes at work. This is how patience becomes art, as persistent cultivation of feeling orchestrates the unseen forces of life, guiding circumstances, timing, and opportunity to converge in harmony with your inner state. This is where connection deepens, as subtle confirmations, inspired ideas, and serendipitous events emerge in alignment with the emotional reality you maintain. This is the revelation that feeling is the true language of creation, the secret instrument that transforms imagination into tangible life, embodying Neville's teaching in practice. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that by mastering sensation, you gain the ability to influence the unfolding of life itself, directing it toward your chosen vision. This is where curiosity ignites, inspiring exploration of increasingly nuanced emotional states and more elaborate inner scenes to expand creative power. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that life responds not to circumstance or effort, but to the fidelity, intensity, and precision of your inner feelings. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for through the science of feeling, you step into the role of conscious creator, shaping reality with intention, sensation, and imagination. Envision a life where the act of creation feels effortless, where desires are realized not through struggle or constant striving, but through the graceful, precise practice of assumption, letting the unseen respond naturally to inner certainty. In this video, you will learn how Neville teaches that assumption is most powerful when it is effortless, how sustained inner conviction allows the subconscious to orchestrate reality without forced action, and how mastering this approach brings ease, flow, and elegance into every area of life. This is where it begins, by internalizing the state of fulfillment so completely that the mind and body no longer question its reality, because effort diminishes the subtle power of assumption, while relaxed, confident, inner acceptance magnifies it. This is how it unfolds, as you cultivate a sense of living from the end naturally, allowing emotion, imagination, and belief to integrate seamlessly, creating a current that the outer world cannot resist reflecting. This is where truth breaks through, revealing that struggle, doubt, and anxious effort are the very forces that impede manifestation, while alignment and inner ease open the channels for reality to respond with precision. This is why it matters, because most people labor outwardly, trying to force results, while the true creator operates silently, confidently, and without resistance, letting life conform effortlessly to inner vision. This is where illusion fades, as you recognize that the external world is not a battlefield but a mirror, reflecting the ease or tension present in the inner state, and that your imagination's fidelity alone directs outcomes. This is the turning point, when you allow assumption to flow naturally, inhabiting the end fully without overthinking, controlling, or pushing, trusting the process as it quietly orchestrates events. This is where insight emerges, that the art of effortless assumption is the subtle mastery of sustaining inner reality while surrendering attachment to how it manifests, creating alignment without friction. This is how mastery begins, with repeated immersion in the inner state, letting sensation, imagination, and belief converge into a seamless whole, influencing circumstance from within. This is the moment when resistance appears but dissolves, as the relaxed yet unwavering inner state neutralizes fear, doubt, and hesitation before they gain momentum. This is why clarity is essential, because only precise, emotionally charged, and confidently assumed states can operate without the need for external validation or forced action. This is where courage steps forward, sustaining the inner reality even when appearances suggest delay, trusting unseen forces to orchestrate timing, opportunity, and events. This is how patience becomes art, as the natural unfolding of life is guided by subtle, consistent assumption rather than frantic effort, producing results that feel inevitable and graceful. This is where connection deepens, as signs, coincidences, and inspired encounters confirm that reality flows in harmony with the inner state of relaxed certainty. This is the revelation that effortless assumption transforms life into a living, flowing expression of imagination, where the creator's power is felt, seen, and lived in every moment. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that the true law operates most powerfully when inner conviction is maintained without struggle, coercion, or worry. This is where curiosity ignites, prompting experimentation with new desires, deeper assumptions, and richer emotional engagement, all carried with ease. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that life mirrors the quality of your inner state, and that effort is unnecessary when assumption is held faithfully and effortlessly. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for when you master assumption without effort, reality bends with elegance to match your inner vision, embodying Neville's law as an effortless, living truth. Envision a reality where imagination is not merely an escape from the mundane, but the gateway to freedom, a portal through which your deepest desires can be realized with precision and certainty. In this video, you will discover how Neville teaches imagination as the primary instrument of creation, how using it deliberately liberates you from limitation, and how mastering this gateway allows you to shape life with clarity, empowerment, and profound joy. This is where it begins, by surrendering to the vivid scenes of your fulfilled desire, allowing the senses, emotions, and mind to converge in a seamless experience, because imagination is the invisible key that unlocks the door to tangible reality. This is how it unfolds, as you practice dwelling in the imagined end, saturating each mental scene with feeling, and letting the subconscious accept it as absolute truth, silently orchestrating the external world to match. This is where truth breaks through, showing that external restrictions are illusions, reflections of unchallenged assumptions, and that freedom begins when imagination becomes sovereign over belief. This is why it matters, because most people confine themselves to circumstance, unaware that imagination offers limitless expansion, and that conscious use of it transforms constraints into opportunity. This is where illusion fades, as you recognize that physical conditions are temporary and malleable, responding faithfully to the inner reality you cultivate with attention and feeling. This is the turning point, when persistent, emotionally charged imagination overrides doubt and resistance, establishing a rhythm of creation that life cannot resist reflecting. This is where insight emerges, that imagination is both the laboratory and the stage upon which desires are enacted, and mastery comes from repeated, precise, and heartfelt engagement. This is how mastery begins, through disciplined mental rehearsal, sustained feeling, and full commitment to inhabiting the end, aligning mind and emotion to direct reality with finesse. This is the moment when resistance appears, challenging conviction, yet persistent imagination transforms opposition into alignment, dissolving doubt as it strengthens the subconscious blueprint. This is why clarity is essential, because only detailed, emotionally immersive mental scenes generate the vibrational signature necessary for faithful manifestation. This is where courage steps forward, allowing you to trust imagination as the primary creative instrument, confident that what is felt and assumed within will manifest externally. This is how patience becomes art, as repeated imaginative rehearsal orchestrates circumstances, timing, and people in harmony with the assumed reality, requiring no external force. This is where connection deepens, as subtle signs, inspired thoughts, and serendipitous encounters validate the power of imaginative creation, confirming its authority over life. This is the revelation that imagination is the gateway to freedom, the conduit through which inner reality shapes external experience, embodying Neville's law in its most practical and potent form. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that the life you long for is always accessible through deliberate, persistent, and emotionally charged imagination. This is where curiosity ignites, inspiring exploration of new desires, scenes, and levels of sensory involvement to expand creative mastery. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that freedom is not external, but emerges from conscious engagement with imagination as the primary tool of life. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for when imagination is honored and wielded with precision, reality becomes a reflection of your inner freedom, and Neville's teachings unfold as living, breathing truth. Envision a life where fulfillment is not a distant goal, but a constant inner state, where every moment is infused with a sensation of desire already realized, and reality bends effortlessly to mirror this inner certainty. In this video, you will discover how Neville teaches living in the state of fulfillment as the ultimate tool for manifestation, how sustaining this inner condition accelerates results, and how mastering it brings clarity, confidence, and the profound freedom of knowing life is always working in your favor. This is where it begins, by consciously entering scenes of imagined reality with complete emotional immersion, feeling every detail as true and already present, because the inner state precedes the outer world, guiding it like an invisible compass. This is how it unfolds, as each thought, emotion, and subtle gesture aligns with the assumed reality, impressing the subconscious mind to orchestrate circumstances that reflect inner certainty. This is where truth breaks through, showing that the present moment is not defined by appearance, but by the state you inhabit, and that living as though fulfilled accelerates the law of assumption into tangible outcomes. This is why it matters, because without sustained immersion in fulfillment, desires remain distant, delayed, or partial, while steady habitation in the end transforms longing into certainty. This is where illusion fades, as you recognize that external evidence is temporary and inconsequential, and that the inner reality is the only true determinant of life's unfolding. This is the turning point, when repeated practice of inhabiting the fulfilled state overrides doubt, fear, and habitual limitation, creating a rhythm of creation that manifests effortlessly. This is where insight emerges, that the feeling of fulfillment is not simply emotion, but the vibrational signature that signals the subconscious to produce corresponding experiences. This is how mastery begins, by consistently prioritizing the inner experience over external validation, allowing your imagination, feeling, and assumption to converge into an unbroken current of reality creation. This is the moment when resistance surfaces, yet the fidelity to the state of fulfillment neutralizes hesitation and reprograms subconscious expectation. This is why clarity is essential, because precise, richly detailed emotional states imprint the subconscious far more effectively than vague or half-hearted attempts. This is where courage steps forward, sustaining the inner reality even when circumstances appear contradictory, trusting the unseen processes to arrange people, events, and outcomes in alignment with desire. This is how patience becomes art, as living in the fulfilled state orchestrates timing, opportunity, and synchronicity without forcing results. This is where connection deepens, as signs, coincidences, and inspired actions confirm the fidelity of your inner state, reinforcing trust in the process. This is the revelation, that fulfillment is not a future destination, but a present condition that once inhabited magnetizes life toward its mirror image. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that living from the end allows creation to operate seamlessly, effortlessly, shaping your world. This is where curiosity ignites, encouraging experimentation with deeper levels of emotional fidelity and increasingly vivid inner scenes. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that the outer world is always secondary to the state of the inner world, and mastery begins internally. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for in living fully in the state of fulfillment, life itself becomes a cinematic unfolding of desires made inevitable, embodying Neville's teachings as living truth. Ask yourself what happens when every interaction, connection, and bond in your life begins to mirror the assumptions you hold about love, friendship, and intimacy. Because relationships are not shaped solely by others, but by the inner state you project and maintain. In this video, you will discover how Neville teaches the law of assumption, specifically in the context of relationships, how imagining and feeling desired interactions as already fulfilled reshapes emotional bonds, and how mastering this principle brings clarity, harmony, and effortless attraction into every connection. This is where it begins, by creating vivid mental scenes of desired interactions, saturating them with warmth, appreciation, and the sensation of being naturally received and reciprocated, because the subconscious aligns outer experiences with the emotional reality you consistently inhabit. This is how it unfolds, as the inner assumption subtly directs thoughts, words, and behaviors, while drawing the right people and opportunities into alignment with your imagined reality. This is where truth breaks through, showing that external behavior is not the primary determinant, but the inner state dictates the quality, timing, and nature of all relationships. This is why it matters, because most attempts at connection are reactive, relying on others' behavior, while deliberate assumption makes you the creator of relational experiences. This is where illusion fades, as you release the belief that love, friendship, or approval must be earned externally, understanding that projection of the fulfilled state draws congruent responses naturally. This is the turning point, when repeated visualization, feeling, and assumption embed a new relational script in the subconscious, guiding circumstances toward alignment. This is where insight emerges, that the inner reality of connection determines outer experience. And mastering this principle removes struggle, insecurity, and longing from relationships. This is how mastery begins, by consistently maintaining the feeling of being loved, respected, or appreciated, letting it inform behavior and perception simultaneously. This is the moment when resistance appears, as old patterns, fears, or doubts challenge new assumptions, yet persistence and emotional fidelity override them, restructuring subconscious expectation. This is why clarity is essential, because vague or inconsistent assumptions produce mixed experiences, whereas precise, emotionally charged assumptions generate consistent relational outcomes. This is where courage steps forward, sustaining the inner state even when appearances contradict it, trusting that the subconscious orchestrates events and people in alignment with your assumption. This is how patience becomes art, as relationships unfold according to the inner blueprint rather than external pressure or manipulation. This is where connection deepens, as synchronicities, inspired interactions, and unexpected opportunities confirm the inner reality is shaping the outer relational landscape. This is the revelation, that assumption is the ultimate tool for conscious relationship creation, turning desire into lived experience without struggle. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that by maintaining the inner state of ideal interaction, you magnetize people, situations, and experiences that mirror it. This is where curiosity ignites, encouraging exploration of new relational possibilities, emotional depth, and levels of intimacy guided by assumption. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that love and connection are reflections of inner assumption, and outer circumstances respond faithfully to the fidelity of your feeling. This is where revelation touches your spirit. For when assumption governs relational experience, life mirrors your inner vision. And Neville's teachings reveal the effortless creation of authentic, fulfilling bonds. Consider the possibility that wealth, abundance, and prosperity are not the result of struggle or external circumstance, but of the precise assumptions you hold and the emotional fidelity with which you inhabit them, because the subconscious responds faithfully to your inner state. In this video, you will discover how Neville teaches manifestation of material and financial desires, how saturating mental scenes with feeling and belief impresses the subconscious, and how mastering this principle allows wealth to flow effortlessly, bringing clarity, confidence, and freedom in the material realm. This is where it begins, by imagining yourself living in complete financial security and abundance, experiencing the sensations of freedom, joy, and satisfaction as though every desire is already fulfilled, because the subconscious cannot distinguish between imagined and lived reality when feeling is vivid. This is how it unfolds, as repeated assumption shapes thinking, decision-making, and opportunities, magnetizing circumstances that mirror the internal state of prosperity. This is where truth breaks through, showing that lack and limitation exist only in the assumption of scarcity, and that abundance is the natural reflection of sustained inner conviction. This is why it matters, because most people chase wealth externally, unaware that the inner blueprint dictates timing, opportunity, and manifestation with precision. This is where illusion fades, as you release the belief that effort, struggle, or external validation are the primary determinants of material success, recognizing that inner state is the foundation of all prosperity. This is the turning point, when persistent assumption, vivid imagination, and charged emotion align to create a magnetic field of abundance that life cannot resist responding to. This is where insight emerges, that feeling rich, grateful, and secure internally produces external conditions, while chasing outcomes externally without inner alignment produces inconsistent results. This is how mastery begins, by consistently inhabiting the state of financial fulfillment, letting inner belief guide thoughts, choices, and actions with precision. This is the moment when resistance appears, as doubts, fears, or habitual scarcity mindsets attempt to surface, yet persistent focus on inner abundance neutralizes them and strengthens subconscious expectation. This is why clarity is essential, because precise, emotionally resonant assumptions produce consistent, replicable results, whereas vague or hesitant beliefs create confusion and delay. This is where courage steps forward, sustaining the feeling of wealth and abundance even in the absence of external evidence, trusting the unseen law to manifest accordingly. This is how patience becomes art, as wealth, opportunity, and prosperity unfold in perfect timing, orchestrated by the subconscious, responding to inner fidelity. This is where connection deepens, as unexpected opportunities, synchronicities, and inspired ideas confirm the alignment between assumption and material reality. This is the revelation, that abundance is not a goal to chase, but a state to inhabit, and when fully embraced internally, it inevitably shapes the external world. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that deliberate assumption transforms scarcity into wealth, desire into tangible outcomes, and imagination into material reality. This is where curiosity ignites, encouraging exploration of new levels of prosperity, expansion, and fulfillment, all rooted in the inner state of abundance. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that financial reality is a reflection of inner assumption and that mastery over wealth begins with mastery of the mind and feeling. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for when you consistently inhabit the state of abundance, life mirrors it effortlessly, embodying Neville's law as a living truth in material form. Envision a reality where desire and detachment coexist, where you feel the fulfillment of your wishes deeply while releasing the need to control timing, outcomes, or circumstances, because the subconscious responds best to certainty untainted by anxiety. In this video, you will discover how Neville teaches detachment as a vital complement to assumption, how maintaining inner faith without clinging accelerates manifestation, and how mastering this balance brings freedom, clarity, and effortless alignment with your desires. This is where it begins, by immersing yourself fully in the sensation of the wish fulfilled, yet consciously releasing attachment to how and when, trusting that the unseen orchestrates events perfectly according to inner fidelity. This is how it unfolds, as you sustain emotional conviction while letting the outer world flow naturally, allowing inspired action and synchronistic opportunities to emerge without resistance. This is where truth breaks through, revealing that clinging, impatience, or worry contaminates the vibrational signal, delaying manifestation, while confident detachment amplifies creative force. This is why it matters, because persistent tension or doubt disrupts the seamless translation of assumption into reality, whereas detachment preserves purity of the inner state. This is where illusion fades, as you see that external evidence is irrelevant to the effectiveness of your assumption, and that your inner reality is the only true determinant of manifestation. This is the turning point, when trust replaces anxiety, when certainty replaces hope, and when inner alignment operates without the friction of conscious striving. This is where insight emerges, that detachment does not mean indifference, but the confident knowing that fulfillment is inevitable, regardless of appearances. This is how mastery begins, through repeated practice of living in the fulfilled state while releasing obsessive focus on the outer outcome, letting the law work unseen. This is the moment when resistance surfaces, as doubt or impatience attempts to disrupt your inner peace, yet unwavering focus on feeling fulfillment neutralizes it. This is why clarity is essential, because the more precise and emotionally resonant your assumption, the easier it is to detach while maintaining vibrational fidelity. This is where courage steps forward, sustaining inner conviction even in the face of delay, contradiction, or apparent setbacks. This is how patience becomes art, as life unfolds in perfect timing, reflecting the purity and stability of your inner state. This is where connection deepens, as subtle signs, coincidences, and inspired actions confirm that detachment enhances, rather than diminishes, creative power. This is the revelation, that letting go while fully inhabiting fulfillment multiplies the efficiency and elegance of manifestation, embodying Neville's law with grace. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that freedom from attachment does not weaken desire but strengthens it, allowing creation to flow naturally. This is where curiosity ignites, inspiring exploration of new desires with full immersion, yet peaceful detachment. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that inner freedom is not absence of desire, but mastery over the tension between longing and fulfillment. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for when detachment and assumption unite, life becomes a seamless reflection of inner certainty, revealing Neville's law in its most elegant and powerful form. Envision a life where every desire, relationship, circumstance, and outcome flows naturally from the inner reality you consistently inhabit. Because Neville's teachings converge into a single undeniable truth: imagination and feeling create life itself. In this video, you will discover the culmination of all his principles, how mastery of assumption, imagination, feeling, persistence, revision, detachment, and inner alignment unlocks effortless creation, and how understanding this ultimate law empowers you to live with clarity, freedom, and the certainty that every wish is inevitable. This is where it begins, by recognizing that all external phenomena are mirrors reflecting the fidelity of your inner state, because the unseen is always active, responsive, and obedient to what you assume and feel as true. This is how it unfolds, as every section, every lesson, every inner practice integrates into a coherent path, showing that life responds predictably to sustained imagination and feeling, regardless of apparent obstacles. This is where truth breaks through, revealing that the power to create, transform, and direct reality has always been within, waiting for conscious awareness, emotional commitment, and persistent assumption. This is why it matters, because knowing and applying this law liberates you from reactive living, struggle, and limitation, granting the ability to shape life intentionally with elegance and certainty. This is where illusion fades, as you release the belief that circumstances, people, or events hold authority over your reality, understanding that only your inner state governs the manifestation of desire. This is the turning point, when consistent application of all principles produces a harmonious alignment between imagination, feeling, subconscious expectation, and external experience. This is where insight emerges, that Neville's teachings are not abstract philosophy but a precise, practical system for creating tangible results in every domain of life. This is how mastery begins, by integrating persistent assumption, vivid imagination, emotional fidelity, deliberate revision, inspired action, and detachment into a seamless practice of conscious creation. This is the moment when resistance dissolves entirely, as inner certainty becomes unshakable, impervious to contradiction, and fully capable of bending circumstances to match vision. This is why clarity is essential, because a fully integrated understanding of these principles allows manifestation to occur effortlessly, predictably, and elegantly. This is where courage steps forward, sustaining faith in unseen processes, trusting that life unfolds in perfect alignment with inner reality. This is how patience becomes art, as the consistent inner state orchestrates timing, opportunity, and synchronicity with precision and grace. This is where connection deepens, as all aspects of life, people, circumstances, and events, mirror the completeness, coherence, and vibrational fidelity of your inner state. This is the revelation that your imagination, feeling, and assumption are not tools, but the very engine of reality, and mastery over them equates to mastery over life itself. This is the spark of empowerment, as you realize that nothing external can resist the certainty of sustained inner conviction, making every desire inevitable. This is where curiosity ignites, inspiring exploration of ever greater visions, deeper emotional fidelity, and higher levels of conscious creation. This is how perspective shifts, teaching that reality is a reflection, a faithful mirror of your inner state, and mastery begins and ends with awareness of this truth. This is where revelation touches your spirit, for when imagination, feeling, and assumption converge flawlessly, life itself becomes the cinematic unfolding of dreams, a testament to Neville Goddard's ultimate wisdom, and the living proof that your inner world creates your external reality.